So welcome. Again, I'm Dr. Maureen Ori. I'm with the Workplace Learning and Performance Group, and I'm happy to be partnering with both Azim Khamisa and IVAT for this webinar today, the six secrets of the bulletproof spirit. Amy Ostrowski is our producer today. Amy, say hey, wave, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Amy's going to be sharing some links and resources in chat throughout the webinar. In fact, Amy, if you want to go ahead and put a link to the IVAT website so that people can be familiar with the Institute for Violence, Abuse, and Trauma, which is timely for some of the times that we're working in and living in now. And so I would like to introduce you to Mr. Azim Khamisa, if you're not familiar with Azim. He is a fantastic speaker and a thought leader when it comes to forgiveness and reconciliation and mindfulness. We're very, very excited to have him join us today. Azim, if you would please go ahead and take a moment to say hello, and we'll say hello, and then we're going to start with a short video.
Well, greetings and namaste to everybody. Thank you for joining. We're going to start with a video and I'll be back.
This morning, we have the heartbreaking story of a man who lost his son to gang violence 14 years ago, yet somehow found the ability to forgive.
He was a great soul, wise, charismatic, good-looking.
Azim Khamisa's 20-year-old son Tariq had everything to live for.
Tariq had a beautiful girlfriend, Jennifer, and they had plans to get married. He was a student at San Diego State University, and he worked Fridays and Saturdays as a pizza delivery man.
But everything changed on January 21st, 1995.
I called the detective, and they told me on the telephone, and I didn't believe them, because that didn't make any sense that Tariq was shot and killed. And I remember after Tariq died that it literally took all of my willpower just to climb out of bed.
Tariq was killed in a gang shooting. The gunman was just 14 years old.
I shot and killed Tariq Khamisa, a person I didn't even know and who didn't do anything wrong to me.
So what I saw in this tragedy was that my son was a victim of the 14-year-old gang member, and that 14-year-old gang member was victim of society. We've created this society. So I felt as an American I must take my share of the responsibility for the bullet that took my son's life. I'm Azim Khamisa, and I forgave my son's killer.
Azim Khamisa has written a book called The Secrets of the Bulletproof Spirit, How to Bounce Back from Life's Hardest Hits. Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
How long did it take you to forgive your son's killer?
It was immediate. I remember when I got the news that it was so painful. I believe in God, and it was so painful I couldn't even be in my body. It was my first out-of-body experience, and I believe I went into the loving arms of God, and He held me in an embrace for the longest time. And when the explosion subsided, I came back to my body with the wisdom that there were victims at both ends of the gun.
Explain how you did it, because in your book you write about the 3 milestones you must go through to reach forgiveness. What is the first milestone?
The first milestone is to acknowledge that you've been wrong. In the book, we talk about how to do that. There's a grieving process that you have to go through. The second piece, which is a milestone, is you have to give up all the resulting resentment. Mandela didn't write this quote, but he made it famous. He said that resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for your enemy to die.
What a great quote.
Exactly. And you think about it, why have such important real estate of your psyche occupied by somebody who's hurt you? Why not forgive and release that real estate so love and joy can live there?
And what is the third milestone?
And the third milestone is to reach out to the offender with love and compassion. Not all of us have to reach out to the family of our son's killer or to our child's killer. Very often the issues are divorce, business partners, all kinds of situations in our society that you can reach out and forgive, but do it with love and compassion. And we talk about it in the book. In the book, there are 4 separate chapters where we deal with the issue about how to forgive.
And you did that when you came face to face with your son's killer in prison. When was that, and what was that face-to-face meeting like?
I met him 5 years after the tragedy, and it took many hours of meditation because, you know, you don't know how you're going to react when you come eyeball to eyeball with your child's killer. And I was sitting to him closer than I am to you, Julie, and I remember looking into his eyes for a very long time, trying to find a murderer in him. But I didn't see a murderer in him. I looked in his eyes and I saw another soul, much like me, much like you. And in fact, I just, you know, around Father's Day, we communicate by letter because it takes a long time to go to him. But this letter, I thought I might bring it because really he didn't have a father. He was born to a 15-year-old, and I have kind of taken the father role to him. And he says, I'm ultimately writing you now to wish you a happy Father's Day.
Wow. Out of all this tragedy, you created something wonderful, a foundation in your son's name. You left behind your successful career as an international investment banker. Tell me about the purpose of the foundation.
The foundation's mission statement is to break the cycle of youth violence by saving lives, empowering kids, and teaching peace. The foundation is named after my son. It's called the Azim Khamisa Foundation. And we've been at it for about 13 years. We bring our message to schools. We have 6 programs, and we have reached over 8 million kids in this 13 years. We're successfully keeping kids away from gangs, guns, and violence by teaching the principles of nonviolence, forgiveness, and peacemaking. We have over 100,000 letters that have come in, you know, from the kids.
In the final moments, your son's killer is still behind bars. He's up for parole in 2027. If he gets out, he will be in his 40s. Will you be there for him?
Absolutely. I actually offered him a job when I met him, which was 5 years after. I forgave him, but I also offered him a job and told him when you come out, you have a job at the foundation. And we look forward to the day when he can join us, because I know that he would save many more lives. We've saved him, but think about how many more lives he will save when he's on stage with his grandfather, who is my partner in this tragedy.
Azim Khamisa, you have an incredible story to tell. We thank you.
Thank you very much. And I also wanted to just add that we have a wonderful website, which is www.bulletproofspirit.com, where you can meet me and you can meet also my co-author, Gillian Quinn. Okay. And we have a lot of resources there for your viewers to go in and go through the process of how to bounce back from having a hard hit. And thank you for being.
You're welcome. You're so welcome. And people can go to our website to read an excerpt from his book.
Wonderful video. I think it really helps us frame up the conversation about forgiveness and the importance of really being able to embrace things that have challenged us. So please, again, we introduce Azim Khamisa to move forward our presentation today.
Thank you, Maureen, and greetings again. I'm sorry if you had some technical problems with the video. It is available on YouTube, and we'll definitely send you a link to it. But the video was shot many years ago, 2009, and I want to kind of update you where we are today. So the foundation is in its 25th year, and the kid who killed my son is now 39. And I've been working with his grandfather for the last 25 years, but he has recently joined us. His parole hearing was on 2018 in November. And of course, I was there advocating for his parole, as was my daughter, who is the executive director of her brother's foundation. And although this never really happens. And the commissioner was very moved. He says in 35 years of his work, he says, I've never had the victim's father and victim's sister advocate for the offender's release. But as you heard me say on the video, from the beginning, I always saw that there were victims at both ends of the gun, that the enemy was not the 14-year-old who took my son's life. The real enemy was a societal peer pressure that forced many young men and women to fall through the crack and then become involved with gangs and crimes and drugs and alcohol and weapons. And that's when I decided that my real enemy was the societal forces, because we lose so many kids. I'm sure most of you are aware that in every metropolitan, urban, or suburban area, youth violence is a huge problem. So the question I asked is, how did we create a society where children kill children? We are the richest nation in the world, and we lose so many young people, like my son, every single day. And it's become, we are in a pandemic, but youth violence is very similar, is also an epidemic. And on a daily basis, we are losing someplace between 20 and 24 kids. And economists studied 25 countries in the world, first world countries like Canada, Australia, Japan, Germany, England, France, and added all the kids that die in those 25 countries and multiplied that by 11. That is how many we lose in the United States of America. So it's heartbreaking statistics. And I was shocked that as the richest nation in the world, we can spend hundreds of billions of dollars on wars on foreign soil, yet we're not doing very much about our defenseless children that are being wiped out in a frenzy of bizarre violence every single day right here in our backyard. So with the grace of God and the universe, the foundation has been very successful. We have a safe school model. We are very much involved from grade 5 to grade 10, because Tony, who killed my son, joined a gang in 6th grade and murdered my son in 8th grade. So we are pleased to have him. He's changed and he is remorseful, and he's joined his grandfather and me. And I know that he's already involved with TKF's work, and he will save many other kids that potentially could have followed him in his former footsteps. I think that gives you the power of forgiveness. So the purpose of today's presentation is to kind of do a dive into the process of forgiveness, and mostly how do you increase your spiritual resiliency. And in this particular book called The Secrets of the Bulletproof Spirit, has 30 different chapters. And I picked half a dozen of them to kind of give you a flavor of what it takes to become spiritually resilient. And in my master class, which starts on June 29th and goes for 4 days, 4 hours a day, 16 hours in total, so quite intensive. Of course, I'll be going much, much deeper, and it's going to be more of an experiential for those of you who want to build your spiritual resiliency. Because in life, I've learned that you're going to get problems that your intellect will not be able to solve, even though you have a double PhD. In life, you're going to get problems. Your hearts are not going to be able to heal. Even though you may be very evolved, and I'm sure most of you are, you wouldn't be here if you didn't have a evolved and a caring and a loving heart. But you're going to get problems that your intellect is not going to be able to solve, or your hearts are not going to be able to heal. Then where are you? Well, by the same token, there are no problems, and let me underscore that there are no problems that you're going to get in your life that your spirit cannot solve or heal. But you need that strong spiritual foundation And I think I am a good example of it because I really did not realize, and my son was alive like many of us, I lived in my head and sometimes in my heart, but I really did not know the power of the Spirit. And what helped me get through Tariq's tragedy 25 years ago, it never goes away, was my spiritual foundation. And I went to, my education background is in math and finance. I was educated in England at some great schools, but that education, those degrees were useless when I lost Tariq. So what really saved me was my spiritual foundation. So the idea is that there isn't much difference. Most people are either spiritually fragile or spiritually resilient. And the difference between these two sets of people is that they need information and they need inspiration. So this book, which has 30 chapters, and each chapter is designed to improve your spiritual resiliency, and it provides you that information and the inspiration. So let me start by talking about the first chapter, and then we'll move from there. And then at the end, we have time for a Q&A. So the first chapter is being bulletproof is your birthright. Here's a quote from Albert Camus. In the midst of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer. Birthright is a powerful word. It refers to something that you are entitled to just because you exist. You arrived on this planet with certain privileges and rights that cannot be taken from you. One of the most important and sacred of these gifts is your innate spiritual resiliency. You were born and you remain spiritually bulletproof, but you may not know about this birthright or how to go about claiming it. You already are the bulletproof spirit, or how to go about claiming. You already are the bulletproof spirit we refer to in this book, but until you claim this part of your identity, you won't be able to take advantage of the amazing benefits that are due you. This book is your personal guide to claiming what is rightfully yours. So what's a good example of that? How do you bring your spirit into your daily lives? And that's the question that I had to kind of play with and say that, yeah, how do I make sure that the spirit obviously is mightier than the intellect and the emotion. So we know we have IQ, we know we have EQ, but where do we stand on our SQ, our spiritual quotient? Now, I started meditating when I was 20 years old. I lost Tariq in my early 40s. So I had a fairly strong spiritual foundation, which helped me get through this tragedy. And what I realized that since spirit is so powerful, more wiser, even Einstein said we must take care not to make intellect our God. Sure, it has powerful muscles, but no personality. It cannot lead, it can only serve. The spirit is so powerful, why don't I lead from the spirit? And today I do. And here's how I do it. And I also teach this to students, that if you have an important decision to make, don't just rely on your intellect or your head. I mean, sure, nothing wrong with a PhD. The more education you have, the better analytical powers you have. So yeah, if you have an important decision to make, go to your intellect, go to your head, and you ask the question, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And once you've analyzed it, and if it does make sense, you go to your heart. And you ask the question, does it feel good? Does it feel right? Does it feel just? Does it feel fair? Because we all have a sense of what is fair. Don't stop there. Go to your spirit. You ask the question, is it inspiring? I don't think many of us take that third step. And I grant it to you that if it is inspiring, if it makes sense, if it feels right and just and fair, and it's inspiring, that will be your right decision. And if you don't get a check mark in all of these three areas, then best not to move forward with that decision. So we have a lot of things to cover, so I'm going to go a little faster. So let me go to the second chapter. And this is called Hits Are What It's All About. Here's a quote from Helen Keller. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved. Spiritually bulletproof people understand that no matter how things seem on the surface, heartbreak and loss are integral parts of the universe's benevolent unfolding. The key word here is integral. Bullets are built into the very fabric of life, and they are an essential element of the human experience, and not, as many people believe, an aberration from the normal course of events. They are as necessary to the wholeness of life as our blessings. Resilient people understand that hits are not just the things that get in the way of real life, they are really what life is all about. Spiritually fragile people are often shocked and resentful when life disappoints them, but expecting to go through life without facing serious hurdles or heartbreaks is like trying to play football and not get tackled. It ain't happening. So what's a good example of that? When you are spiritually resilient, you don't ask the question, why me? That is a victim mentality. The question you really ask is, why did I attract this to me? You get different answers, don't you? Because the universe works this way. We all have a spiritual purpose. We all have a life's mission. And sometimes it's complicated to know what that is. For me, obviously, my spiritual purpose was not to be in the international finance business, but to teach what I teach today. Teach kids nonviolence, teach empathy, teach forgiveness, and do webinars and workshops of creating more spiritual resiliency. Obviously, I got that gift from my tragedy. So it's important to get that we all have a spiritual purpose. And when we ask the question, when you get a hit, is why did I attract this to me? It is the universe's way to nudge yourself to your life's mission. Now, this didn't sit right for me either, but having done this work for 25 years, I've had the honor to meet many luminaries, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I met him in 2004 when we were hosted by Pope John Paul. He passed in 2005, only 30 of us, and we had an amazing 2 days with His Holiness. And I remember taking 9 pages of notes because he's an enlightened human being. And as he walks into the room, he lights up the room. And I got very close to, because he travels with an entourage, and I got very close to the monk that does his translation. And I told him, I have a hard time with this concept. It comes from the Tibetan Buddhism that everything that happens to you, you attract. Did I attract the murder of my son? I says, no parent would do that. And he says, according to the Buddhist philosophy, and this may sound a little evolved, but I think it is valuable to get this lesson. He says, according to Buddhist philosophy, before you were born, your son was born. We believe in every lifetime you have lessons to learn. And your lesson was forgiveness. And you had a contract with your son that he would come to your life and he would tragically pass because God gave us free will. And you still had to choose between revenge and forgiveness. And you made the right choice to forgive because in your next lifetime, you don't have to go through losing another son. So I know this is not something we all have to deal with, but we get a lot of hits. A lot of people that come to my workshop, there's a lot of family issues, mother, daughter, father, son, husband, wife, ex-wives, business partners. There's a lot of grief. But all of those hits that we experience is the universe trying to nudge us towards our spiritual purpose. So the question to ask as you become more resilient is not why me, but why did I attract this to me? Okay. So here's chapter number 3. Bullets are really spiritual bullion. Here's a quote by Einstein: "In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity." Spiritually fragile people believe that the physical, emotional, and financial hits they take are completely worthless and wasteful, and they bitterly resent them. Spiritually bulletproof people know that life's heartbreaking hits always contain the seeds of life's soul-making moments, and they see them as incredibly valuable, even if they are downright devastating. While spiritually vulnerable people are quick to judge a hit as being a total loss, their more resilient counterparts resist despair because deep down they believe that there is treasure lying somewhere beneath the ruins all around them, and they are willing to look for it. Looking for treasure where others see only worthless rubble is an ancient tradition that we would be well served to revive. Alchemy is the ancient art and science concerned with turning base metal into gold. Alchemy also refers to transformation in general. Jean Dubuis, a French philosopher and one of the world's renowned modern-day alchemists, writes, "Alchemy is the art of manipulating life and consciousness in matter to help it evolve to solve problems of inner disharmonies." Spiritually, alchemy is all about the transformation of our souls, finding the treasure within, even creating it out of devastation and loss. So what's a good example about this? I know some of you might have read the book, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. One of my favorite books. I keep this by my bedside. And it's about life. If you haven't read it, it's been translated into every major language in the world, millions of copies. But it's about life. It's about children. It's about marriage. It's about work. It's about life. It's about death. It's about all of the things we go through in our lives. And there's a beautiful chapter in the book about joy and sorrow. And what Gibran is saying is that we feel joy with the same faculty we feel sorrow with. So when you're feeling joy, sorrow is sleeping on your bed. And when you're feeling sorrow, joy is sleeping on your bed. So you can expand this faculty of joy and sorrow by going through either, high levels of joy or dealing with deep levels of pain, as I had to deal with. And he gives this example of a potter that is working with clay, is making this masterpiece with clay. He's so into creating this masterpiece that he actually wets the clay with his own tears. But once the masterpiece is actually done, he has to take that masterpiece and put it in a 2300 degree Fahrenheit oven for 18 hours so that the clay can become porcelain and radiate its beauty. I know what it feels like to be in that 2300 degree Fahrenheit oven. And I'm sure most everybody has had a hit and discovered the pain that goes with it. And as His Holiness will tell you, pain is unavoidable. It is the universe's way to help us nudge again to our life's mission, to our spiritual purpose. Suffering is avoidable because suffering is self-inflicted. So I want to change your lenses about pain. Pain is not a bad thing if it molds you, much like the clay to become porcelain and radiate its beauty. It can do the same for you. So it is better to go through pain. Rumi says the cure for pain is in the pain. Another great Rumi quote is that the light enters through the wound. We don't like pain. Slight headache, and you want an extra strength Tylenol. Well, you're going to take another one 4 or 5 hours later. But if you are able to get that the cure for pain is in the pain, there's much that we can become more spiritually resilient. Just like the clay become porcelain and radiate its beauty, so can we. So that's a good lesson there. Okay, let's keep going. So this is number 4. Practice good spiritual hygiene. Here's a quote by D. Curry. Spiritual hygiene is mindful attention to developing and sustaining a relationship with ourselves as spiritual beings. Spiritually bulletproof people understand that in order to take life's heartbreaking, mind-boggling, and gut-wrenching hits and come out on top, they must keep themselves in prime spiritual condition. They take care of their spirits through things like prayer, meditation, and mindfulness in much the same way that they maintain their physical bodies with things like nutrition, exercise, and cleanliness. They develop spiritual hygiene routines that keep them spiritually hearty and therefore much more likely to bounce back from the inevitable bullets that come their way. They don't wait until bad things happen to consider their soul's needs. They're constantly building their spiritual stamina and reserve so that they have something to draw upon when crisis or adversity strikes. Well, that's pretty obvious right now going through the pandemic, that spiritual resiliency is the way to get through this. There's good, there are healthy ways to grieve and there are unhealthy ways to grieve. Obviously, taking legal or illegal drugs is an unhealthy way. Prayer, meditation, journaling was very useful to me. Spending time with nature, reading something inspiring keeps you more spiritually resilient. I mean, I meditate now 2 hours a day. My practice was an hour a day. And I meditate 3 different times a day. And this particular preamble I'm going to share with you is on my website, is a free download, and I have 2 guided meditation. One is on forgiveness because I teach a 2-day course as I'm going to do at the end of this month. And the other one is actually manifesting your life's mission. So feel free to download this. But let me talk a little bit about the preamble because there are many different meditation techniques out there. I've studied all of them. I started meditating when I was 20. I was trained by one of the cronies. My mom was very spiritual. My dad was a businessman. So I grew up with equal emphasis on my career and my spiritual foundation. And I was running a company with 100 people, the busy guy, and this friend of my mom said to me, you need to get into meditation. And I said, well, I have no time. I'm running 100, I've got plenty, working 18 hours a day, I don't have time. He says, well, if you learn how to meditate, you can do your work in half the time. That got my attention. Because when you're working, when you have a deeply developed spiritual meditation practice, you definitely are much more impactful and much more effective. And you can actually accomplish your task much quicker because the universe is helping you. So that got me into meditation. I studied all of the other methods out there and I've now created my own. So what is meditation? So most people don't realize that you go from one thought to the next thought to the third thought to the fourth one, because this is a meaning-making machine, and it's continuously busy giving you this monkey mind, thought after thought after thought. But you can't think of 2 thoughts at the same time. You can think about one thought and then you go to the next thought. But there's a transition and there's a gap in between the one thought and the next thought. When you are in that gap, you are meditating. But that gap is so infinitesimal, you don't actually feel it. But as you practice more meditation, you are able to increase that gap. Even the most experienced meditation, because I do 2 hours a day, you get seconds in the gap. But even half a second in the gap is very blissful. So the idea behind meditation is to find the gap. So at night when I meditate, I do half an hour before I go to sleep. I don't even try and get into the gap. At a busy day, most of us do. We all work very, very hard. lots of emails and a lot of meetings and what have you. What I do is I empty my mind. I look at my mind as a basket of apples. I bring each thought into focus and actually remove it from the basket and put it on the table. I can still see the apple, but I'm objective about it. I'm witnessing it. I'm not subjectively involved thinking about it. It's important to remember to empty your mind. That's what happens to me and probably will happen to you. Is some of these apples creep back in even after you remove them. You think, well, I thought I took that out. You know, by the way, that's very valuable information. So I keep a little pad by my bed because most of them are very relationship driven. I need to call my grandkids. I need to talk to my daughter. I need to call this friend. I need to say sorry to somebody I hurt or offer forgiveness to resolve those issues that we all come through. So those apples that crawl back in is important for you to resolve. I have a 3-day rule. If I say something hurtful to somebody or get angry, you know, I ask for forgiveness. Somebody hurts me, I offer forgiveness. I don't want to be living in that resentment or guilt because that precludes you from finding that gap while you meditate. So all of those apples that creep back in, look at them, write them down, and do whatever it is you have to do to resolve them so they don't crop up in your future meditation. And then I get up between 4 and 5. I grew up as a Sufi. That's the bewitching hour for meditation. And the world is very quiet, unless, of course, you're in Las Vegas because they never close down. But 4 to 5, the world is very quiet. And since you have not added anything after, you know, emptying your mind, you sleep, you dream, you process, more chance for you to find the gap. And I do an hour because I like to get as many seconds as I possibly can, because it's a very blissful place. And I will be doing a guided meditation. We don't have time to do it today, but I'll be doing at least 2 of them in the 4-day workshops. It's a very powerful place, and hoping that you can also experience that gap. And then I go back to sleep at 5 and I get up around 7:30, and I do another half an hour. And what I do there is I look at my day ahead. And I invite the Spirit to help me manifest whatever it is I'm trying to do. So in my morning meditation, all of you were in there, and my intention was to create some healing and some transformation. Because as we said earlier, the Spirit is far more powerful, far more wiser, and will help you manifest beyond your intellect and your emotion. So it's a good way to develop a strong SQ. Now, if you don't want to get up at 4 to 5, and I get that, then at least meditate twice a day. So at night, you empty your mind. In the morning, you break up your meditation into 2 parts. First half, get the gap. Second half, invite the Spirit to help you manifest whatever it is you're trying to accomplish that day or in your life. All right, let's keep going.
And if you would, please put into chat. Amy has put it while Azim gets his next thoughts together. Put into chat so far. What are you taking away? What are some of your insights that you've had? And go ahead, Azim.
Thank you, Maureen. So the 5th chapter I chose is the dance between desire and detachment. The dance between desire and detachment. If you care enough for a result, you will most certainly attain it. It's a quote by William James. How helpless we are like netted birds when we are caught by desire. Belva Plain. If you want to begin really acting from the wisdom of your own bulletproof spirit, you must learn to embrace one of life's most profound paradoxes. You must figure out how to combine passionate desire and dispassionate detachment. This dance of desire and detachment requires grace and practice, but will reward you with a tremendous boost in your ability to bounce back after taking a hit. Spiritually fragile people are often unaware of how important their desires really are to the manifestation of their dreams. They may also be rigidly attached to things turning out exactly as they want them to. Resilient people understand that they must learn to simultaneously harness the power of their desire and practice detachment from outcome if they hope to find a happiness that lies beyond the heartache that comes their way. So this is something else I learned from His Holiness. We all probably have read the book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And when you meet an enlightened human being like His Holiness, they are present 24/7. And one of the things he taught me is that all of our emotions have a frequency. So when you get to anger and resentment and hatred and greed and avarice and judgment, these are very low vibratory emotions. Happiness doesn't reside there. Then there are these high vibratory emotions of goodwill, trust, friendship, empathy, gratitude. Forgiveness is right there with love, compassion. And of course, His Holiness exudes compassion. This is where happiness lives. And when you meet Him, He's always vibrating here 24/7. Us mortals all get a bad hair day, I do too, and you fall off the wagon and you get angry. What I do now is I add another half an hour to my 2 hours and I get back into vibrating here. But I can tell you, having done this work for 25 years, I'm spending more time in these high vibratory emotions. And when you do that, your life is more in the flow, you are healthier, and you are happier. So the idea between having a passionate desire, because otherwise the universe doesn't kick in, is to not be attached to the outcome. So what I learned from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he says, yeah, sure, put out your desire because the universe wants to respond to your desire. The intentions are very strong. And in my guided meditation, we put a very strong intention, because once you put an intention in a meditative state, it's like planting a seed in very fertile soil. And as you repeatedly go back into meditation, that seed will take root. But do not be attached to the outcome. So he says, what I do is, of course, I set the desire, but then I add the words that if I don't get the outcome I want the outcome that is in the highest good for me, the other person, and the universe. And if you get an outcome that you don't want, you have to have the faith that the outcome you actually got was better for you, because the universe does not make a mistake. So that was very freeing for me, because I recognized that I've healed my past, and I told her, I get along with I'm divorced with my ex-wife, her family, my siblings, my parents. Of course, they both passed. I get along with the kid who killed my son. I have no axe to grind with anybody that in my past, and I've healed that through forgiveness. And he was very funny about it. He said, most people come to me and ask me, how do they give up your past? My issue was future. As an investment banker, I'm always doing exit strategies and planning the future. And this was very helpful to me, that now when I meditate, I create a passionate desire for what I want to achieve, but I give up the attachment to the outcome. And if I get a different outcome, I'm working on the faith that that outcome was better for me. So it's a great tool to take in. And then one last, because I want to make sure we have time for questions. One last chapter is, the title is The Real Meaning of the F Word. To forgive is to set a prisoner free and find out that the prisoner was you. This is a quote by Louis Medis. For some spiritually fragile people, forgiveness is like a dirty word. After being hurt or betrayed, they may actually be offended by the idea of forgiving the person or people responsible for the hit they've taken. They have a lot of misconceptions about forgiveness, and these prevent them from using its power to help them bounce back from the bullets they take. Spiritually bulletproof people understand the profound power of forgiveness and make a personal commitment to practicing it in their lives. They understand that forgiveness is a gift to themselves because it can free them from the residual anger and pain left by life's heartbreaking hits. when you understand the real meaning of the F word, you will send your spiritual resiliency through the roof. So, 25 years ago when I chose to forgive my son's killer, I had no clue everything that has manifested in my life as a result of that choice. So the point I want to try and make here is that we're going to do a deep dive in the master class. I'm going to teach you 3 steps of how to forgive people that have harmed you, and 3 steps that are more like milestones, how to forgive yourselves. Because it's important to forgive yourselves. You can't get to peace by just forgiving people that have harmed. You have to look at yourself. So I'm going to do both of those, forgiving people that have harmed you and forgiving yourselves. And the reason is that because I don't harbor any resentment for what has been done to me or guilt for the harm that I have caused, I can be out there 100%. Many of us are debilitated by this knowing emotions that show up if you're living in resentment, anger, hatred, or living in guilt. And the important thing to get is once you get forgiveness and once you get spiritual resiliency, and when you are not living in resentment or guilt, you will be 100 times more productive, more impactful, because now you are there at your fullest potential, at your fullest zenith. I wasn't trained in social services or doing this work. I was involved in international finance, and I was successful at that. And I had a very full life, and then I had no life. I remember just getting out of bed took all of my willpower. I have a very full life, especially working in the foundation with the kids. And this life is far more fulfilling. Investment banking was about money. This is about saving lives of kids, teaching forgiveness, creating more peace in the world. And all of that happened as a result of my choice. So the point I want to get across is that helping get through, if you're living in this anger, resentment, it's compromising your ability to be out there living a full, healthy, and an impactful life. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to Maureen.